Hey, what's up guys, this is Nishant for CG Force and welcome to the 6th tutorial of phase 2. And in this tutorial we're going to learn about sculpting, or say organic modeling, which is the second type of 3D modeling. We already talked a lot about sculpting in our phase 1, and we know that we are not going to use vertices, edges and faces to influence the shape and structure of a 3D model. And instead we are going to use different types of brushes to change the topology and shape of mesh of our 3D model. So you can see I have this object in my 3D viewport, right? This is the actual default cube of the Blender system. All I did is just simply applied this subdivision modifier up to level 8 on viewport and then simply applied it. And the reason to apply these high number of subdivisions is sculpting is directly proportional to number of vertices or polygons on 3D model, because more number of vertices or polygons gonna give us more better quality and detail in sculpting. So due to that fact, I use such high number of subdivisions. So let's start with sculpting. So you can access sculpt mode from this object mode, or you can simply access from it by pressing Ctrl tab on your keyboard, and then you have this pie menu, or you can simply access it from this sculpting workspace. So you can see this is our sculpt mode. So you can see we have long list of different types of brushes in our toolbar. And these all different types of brushes play their own significant role to help us to achieve our goals. So this toolbar of these brushes can be a little bit daunting for the first time if you want to use any specific brush, and it can be a little bit confusing to choose the exact brush. So you can simply drag this bar out to see the names of all these brushes just like that. So now you can see every single brush from its name. Similarly, every single brush on this toolbar have their own unique properties to work around in this sculpt mode. You can also check the properties over here in the properties panel of this Blender system. However, you can simply access these properties again on the sidebar of the 3D viewport by pressing on your keyboard, go to tools, and now you can see we have the same identical properties over here. You can also access these properties from here on the tool settings menu bar. We have radius, strength, brush settings, which is generally same as this one. You can simply access all these properties from even here. It is just according for your comfort that plenty of people like to use properties from the sidebar or from the top bar. So that's completely up to you. That's how you're gonna use it. So in this tutorial, first I'm going to explain you all the properties of these brushes, because all these brushes actually work with these same properties throughout the entire list. So it's better to understand these properties first and then go to these brushes and see how they exactly work in this sculpting mode. So let's get started with our properties. So we have the first brush of the list, which is the draw brush, and this is the thumbnail preview of this brush, in which you can see how that brush exactly going to work on your 3D model. By default in sculpt mode, the mirror mode is actually activated on axis. So make sure you deactivate it if you don't want to use it on any specific axis. Speaking about thumbnail preview, and now you can see that's how this draw brush gonna work on our 3D model, which is just like that. And we have the options about this sculpt brush. We can create a copy of this sculpt brush to add a new brush in our toolbar list, and then you can simply delete that brush by pressing shift on your keyboard and closing that specific brush, and reload your Blender file, and that brush will be gone for good. Then we have the radius, strength and direction, which is actually the radius of this brush. You can see the radius of this brush as well as the strength of this brush. You can also change the radius of this brush by pressing F on your keyboard, and now you can simply drag it out or drag it in to increase or decrease the radius. And you can also change the strength of this brush by simply pressing shift F on your keyboard, and now you can simply change the strength of this brush. Then we have the direction. If you are using add direction, then it means it is going to move your vertices onto the outward direction of your 3D model. And if you use subtract button, it is gonna exactly opposite and gonna move your vertices into the inward direction just like that. However, if you are using any single one of direction and you don't want to grab your brush around here and there to simply change the direction, so all you can do simply press Ctrl on your keyboard, and now it's gonna do the exact inverse of your selection. We are using add, but we are doing subtract by simply pressing Ctrl on our keyboard, right? Then we have normal radius. Normal radius is actually the ratio between the radius of your brush and the radius, which is actually sampling your normals on the surface of your 3D model when you start stroking. So the normal radius can be changed according to your personal preference. If the normal radius is completely 0, so you can see there is no effect on your 3D surface anymore. So if you crank up to 0.5, it's gonna add more like a pointy surface on your 3D model, right? So if you crank up this normal radius to 2, now it's gonna add more better and spherical data on your 3D model, just like that. So you can see the difference between their curve, right? So that's what this normal radius do. I'm gonna keep it to 0.5 as normal. So then we have auto smoothing, and we have a pen function in front of it. Well, auto smooth actually used to smooth out your 3D model while you are sculpting on it. So this pen sensitivity is actually for pen pressure tool, which means it is made for tablet. Most of the sculpting artists actually use sculpting mode with tablets, and with the help of tablet, they actually let their system to understand the pen pressure on the tablet and to do some specific tasks. So you can simply activate it if you are working with tablet. So we also have these pen pressure in front of our radius and strength, so you can change according to your own choice. Then we have options. The first one is the topology or masking. So to perform topology masking, let me add another object with this sphere and join it, and I can simply do it from layout. So I'm gonna add another cube over here, and then I'm gonna subdivide it a little bit up to like 30 subdivision. Yeah, that could be fine. Then I'm gonna scale it down a little bit in edit mode and grab it down to x-axis. So now I'm gonna join these two objects together, but make sure you always be mindful of the origin of your object, because sculpting always gonna calculate the origin of your model when it's gonna start working with sculpting. So I'm gonna select this sphere as my active object, and now I'm gonna press Ctrl J on my keyboard to join these two objects together, and now you can see these two objects are one. So let's get back to sculpting. So now you can see if I start working on my sphere with sculpting tool, and if I hover my mouse on this cube, and you can see this cube is also getting affected by my cursor, right? So what if I only work to sphere but I don't want to influence my cube? Then you can simply activate this topology auto masking and start working your sphere, and hover your mouse on cube this time, and now you can see it won't get affected anymore. Similarly, if you start working with cube and take your mouse onto sphere, and now that sphere is not getting affected. So that topology auto masking can be very useful in very crucial parts between two objects. So then we have accumulate. So accumulate actually used to pile up the vertices. So let me show you first without it. So you can see this is a normal stroke of our without using accumulate, right? So once you activate it, and now if you start dabbing your stroke onto your 3D model, and now you can see the vertices start to taking a little bit weird shape on the edges. And now you can see what this accumulate does. When you activate the accumulate, the vertices on your 3D mesh starts to pile on and on and on to create such a highly peaked surface. So that's what this accumulate all does. So then we have the radius unit. How you want to see the unit of your radius. If you want to see them in views, then it's gonna see in pixels. You can simply change it to scene, and they're gonna change it to your scene units. Then we have sculpt plane. Sculpt plane has few different types. Working in different sculpt planes matters a lot. So first one is the area plane. So when you're gonna use your area plane type sculpt plane, then what it's gonna do is when you're gonna start using your brush on the edge of your 3D model to add the details, then it's gonna sample your 3D mesh from the normals of your 3D model, or you can say the area of your 3D model. And the area plane actually works best to add details on corners or edges of any 3D modeling, because it doesn't cause any stretching or dragging of your texture of your brush on the edges. But when it comes to using the view plane, it always causes some sort of stretching on the edges when you're gonna use the brush, and you probably can see at the moment with the straw brush, but when we're gonna use the texture in our brush, then you will see it more better. Then we simply has the x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. No matter what you do, if you are using any specific axis, then when you're gonna dab the stroke on your 3D surface, it will always work in that specific axis, which is the x at the moment, and you can see the mesh is kinda jaggeding up on the x-axis. Then you can simply use the y, and now you can see it is kinda acting weird. right? We are using add direction, but it is actually carving out on the surface because our y-axis is actually on this direction and this surface is actually moving towards the positive y-axis. And similarly, if you start working on this side and you can see the vertices are moving out to the y-axis. So similarly, you can also use it with z-plane and all. Then we have original normals. So to demonstrate your original normals, let me first go to edit mode, and I'm gonna select a couple of vertices over here by pressing C on my keyboard. I'm gonna select this selection, and I'm gonna flip these vertices purposely for a moment by pressing Alt N on my keyboard to open up the normals and flip. Get out of edit mode, and now you can see we have this small patch on our 3D surface, which means these faces has something going on with themselves. So these faces are now flipped, their normals are now acting inwards as outward, and now I'm gonna use my sculpting brush from this normal surface to this surface of 3D model. So I'm gonna start dabbing like that. And now you can see this surface actually being grabbed out towards the inward direction because its front facing normals are actually acting onto the other side, right? But when it comes to this surface, their normals are actually the front facing, so they are moving outward onto this side, but these normals are moving out on that side, right? So when you activate this original normal, what it's gonna do is gonna calculate the normal from your first stroke of your brush. So if I start sculpting over here, and now you can see the surface is simply pulling the vertices in the outward direction, right? But when you're gonna start using your brush on this normal surface over here, and now you can see this brush is now also moving these vertices into the inward direction, but we are using add direction over here, right? So that's what this original normal is actually doing. It is using that normal type onto the other type of this 3D mesh to sculpt our model, right? So due to this reason, you can use this original normal for a few times during your sculpting. Then we have original plane. Original plane is actually the concept which is related to clay or clay strip, which I'm going to explain further in this tutorial, so hang on for that. Then we have front faces. Suppose we have these flip normals which are actually giving us the backside of their polygons or faces. So if you only want to work on our front faces, then you can simply activate this, and now you can simply work on this part there, and now you can see that back face part completely being neglected by this brush. And now let me change the normals. Okay, select entire model, recalculate normals by pressing Shift 10, and now we are good to go. Then we have 2D fall off. 2D fall off actually changes your brush style from 3D sphere to 2D circle like this, and you can see how it works, right? So once you deactivate it, and now you're gonna see it completely works like a spherical brush, right? And it also gonna impact the backside mesh of this 3D model. So that's what this 2D fall off does. Then we have texture, and you can see we have a checker texture over here to add any texture in our this section to use with our sculpting brush. So you can simply use textures from this texture properties from properties panel. You can use all these different types of procedural texture from this list, which we have talked about a lot in phase 1. So suppose you want to use Voronoi texture from this list, then it will automatically update texture over here. So you can simply add different types of texture in your list and select it from this texture thumbnail preview. And now you can see I can use this texture on this 3D model, right? And we have this cellular pattern on our 3D model, right? So that's how this texture pattern works. However, you can use this texture with different types of mappings. So tile is actually set by default. You can use view plane, which works exactly like that area plane of sculpt. So with view plane, you can simply use the texture on edges from one edge to another edge, and you can see it causes some sort of stretching on the edge, right? So when you're gonna use this to area plane, and you can see it doesn't cause any kind of stretching on the edges, right? And the texture is completely clean on the edges because the area plane actually uses your normals of your 3D model to place the texture pattern on your 3D model on edges, and that's why this area plane creates better results on edges. Then we have tiled. If you want to use your texture as a tiled, and you can also change the angle of your texture pattern, you can offset your texture, and you can also change the size of your texture. However, you can simply add any other texture from your hard drive of your computer by simply going to here on image or movie, go to here and open it new texture from here. Suppose I'm gonna use the alien skin, so I'm going to use this one, open image, and now we have this texture updated on our this texture preview, right? So I can simply use this texture and now add my texture on this 3D cube. It's quite nice, right? And you can see the details, right? So you can also change the size of this texture by simply adding 5 by 5 by 5, and now we have this texture in the patterns, right? So you can simply use this texture as is tiled. Let's simply show you over here, right? Looks pretty nice. And the next one is 3D, in which you can let me increase the size a little bit, and in this 3D view you can simply start painting your texture on your 3D model. And in 3D, the blender gonna use your texture according to the location of your vertices on your 3D model, just like that. See, it is printing your texture on different vertices, and whenever you start using your brush again on those spots, it will always remember that position is already being used by that texture. So this 3D actually calculate the vertex coordinates on your 3D model. Then we have random. It will just use your texture randomly on your 3D model, just like that. And this is not what I use the most. Then we have the stencil, and you can see we have this stencil by 5 by 5, which you have set over here, and you can simply drag it down to y1. And now we have this one single texture on our stencil, and you can use this stencil by placing it on our 3D model. You can simply change the position of the stencil by pressing right mouse button, and you can simply place it anywhere you want on your 3D model, and then simply sculpt it out, just like that. And you can also change the scale of this stencil by holding shift on your keyboard and using right mouse button. You can simply increase or decrease the size of the scale. Simply you can rotate it by pressing Ctrl on your keyboard, just like that. You can also change the angle from here. This angle only works with positive values. Then you can simply reset it if you are not happy with this position location. And you can see in the view plane we also have this rake and random. A rake is used to set your edges of your 3D model in just the way you are using your brush to add strokes on your 3D model. Then we have random, if you want your texture to be used as random. So a rake gonna provide more better edge flow on carved surfaces, and random just gonna add texture more randomly on surface. So next one is sample bias, and sample bias gonna help us to add texture either in the inward way or outward way, just like this draw brush. So if I crank it down to -1, and you can see it is moving that brush inward in the direction, but it also using the texture of this alpha mask, right? Similarly, if I use +1, and it's gonna do the opposite, just like that. So let's just keep it to 0. Okay, so the next thing is stroke. So stroke is actually the method which is gonna help us to add detail on our 3D model with this brush, right? So by default we are using the spacing type of stroke method, which help us to use this texture in this way on our 3D model, right? So that's what spacing does. And you can see this texture is actually being copied in multiple frames on this 3D model, right? So you can increase the distance between the spacing from this spacing. If I crank this spacing a little bit up, and now I'm gonna use this brush on my 3D model, and now you can see it is adding detail with according to this spacing distance. So I'm gonna keep it to 10%. You can also adjust the strength for spacing. Well, this spacing distance is actually how you want to calculate the distance on your screen to use this spacing. Then we have jitter, which is actually turned off by default, because jitter actually help us to create more randomly variationally texture on our 3D model, just like that. And you can see the texture is being sprayed on my 3D model, right? And that's what this jitter does. Then we have the input samples, which gonna help us to smooth out our stroke on our 3D model. Suppose if I start using this brush, and now gonna help me to add the details on my 3D model more smoothly. So that's what this input samples does. After this spacing, we have few more other types of stroke method which can use on our 3D model. So first one is the dots, and now you can see how exactly our brush works with the dot system, which is quite aggressive and wild. Then you can simply use drag dot, and what this drag dot gonna do is simply use this texture on 3D model and as a dot, and now you can simply drag this dot to anywhere on your 3D model where you want to add the details, just like that. See, quite useful to use and very creative. So the next thing is spacing which was our default. So the next one is this airbrush, which is very useful and artistic type of stroke. So if you dab your stroke only once on your surface and keep your left mouse button pressed, and now you're gonna see the mesh is kinda extruding out from the surface, right, like this, right? So similarly you can use it to create many different things like that. It's very creative and useful with this nature. Then we have anchored. Anchored is way more useful. It can literally help you to create more different types of topologies. So you can simply use it like that. See, anchored actually gonna use your texture and it gonna scale out on the entire topology of your 3D model, just like that. And you can do a lot of creative stuff with this. Even you can entirely change your 3D model with this, but that's completely up to you that how you're gonna use it. You can also use it from edge to edge, which means suppose if I want to use this anchor from this edge to edge, and what it's gonna do is it's gonna start scaling out the texture on from that part, right? So if I use this edge to edge, what it's gonna do is simply gonna use the texture in between just these two edges, right? So that's what it does. After that we have a line. So line is very simple. You can create texture with the help of line on your 3D model. You can simply create line just like that. Very simple and linear to use. You can also use straight line. So first you need to dab your stroke, and then you need to hold Alt on your keyboard, and now it will give you a more complete straight line, just like that. Just like that. So after that we have curve. Curve is very useful and intuitive type of tool to use with sculpting. With curve you can create a Bezier curve on your 3D model to add pattern on a specific path, and you can see we have few options under this panel. From this you can add a new curve and then you can draw that curve. And to draw curve on your 3D model, all you need to do is simply hold the control key on your keyboard and then using right mouse button to start painting your curve. Then you can simply use that curve like that to draw pattern on your 3D model. And once you are done with your pattern of curve, you can simply use this draw curve to draw that curve on your 3D model just like that, or you can simply press enter on your keyboard to draw that curve. And you can also use this curve multiple times on your 3D model, and you can also change its position from these handles. And how to use it, that's completely up to you. So after these strokes we have the next thing, which is the smooth stroke. Smooth stroke is actually the technique which gonna help us to draw stroke more smoothly. So as I start using this smooth stroke, you can see I got a line which is kinda dragging a pattern behind it, which is our texture, and it is helping us to create more smooth texture on our 3D model. And you can also increase the distance between this line and texture by simply increasing or decreasing this value of radius, and this factor value also affects that distance of line. More higher factor will help you to achieve more smoother results. And you can see as I crank up this factor value, the distance between the line and stroke also increases. So that's how you can use this smooth stroke to generate smoother strokes. Then we have fall off, and you can see we have different types of curves presets in this list, which is very similar to that proportional editing which we used to use in edit mode. And you can use all these different types of curves preset to change your brush style to be used on this 3D model. You can also use a custom way in which you can edit your brush style from this graph, and then you can use it on your 3D model. After that we have display, and what it's gonna help us to do is it's gonna help us to see the curve alpha of our brush right in our 3D viewport. And as you can see, we can see our brush in 3D viewport, but it doesn't demonstrate us more rather than just two circles, right? And you can simply activate it, and now you can see that brush style on your cursor, right? After that we have the texture alpha. Similarly, if you are using any texture, it's gonna show you the texture on your brush, and you can simply use it like that. So after that we have show brush. It's gonna show us the color to add and subtract direction of our brush. If you want to change it to something like this, if I want to use add as green and subtract as red, then you can simply see that now my brush color is changed to green because I'm using it as an add, and now it's gonna change to a red color because I'm going to use it as subtract. However, if you want to reset these colors, you can simply go to that, press right mouse button and simply reset these colors. After that we have custom icon. Custom icon is to change the icons, which is this thumbnail preview of this brush, so that if you are making your own different types of brushes, then you can create their own custom icons and simply you can update it from here. Then we have the next most important and basic fundamental of sculpting, which is the dynamic topology. So dynamic topology is actually the concept which is going to help us to add more geometry to our 3D model, but it will also disrupt your previously subdivided mesh. However, dynamic topology is more useful when you're going to add more details in your 3D model, and dynamic topology also going to break your entire topology into tries. It can also change the resolution of your entire mesh. Suppose if you're working on a dense mesh, like I've been working on this tutorial, you can change this entire resolution size from this dynamic topology. And when you're going to activate the dynamic topology, it will give you this warning message, which means it is not going to preserve any colors data, UVs data, or any other custom data which is related to vertices. We are fine with that, and you're gonna save it. Okay. And now you can see we have few other functionality related to this dynamic topology, and we are getting this detail size, a refinery method, and detailing. Details, how much resolution you want to set to your detailing method, and what kind of refinery method you want to use, and what kind of detailing method you want to use. You can also use this smooth shading to smooth out your surface. Then we have this remesher, which we're gonna use in a few moments. So first one is the detail size, and we are using the detailing method as a relative detail, which means this relative detailing method, which is actually dependent on the distance of your cursor from your 3D model. So suppose if you are adding detail over from here, and now you can see the dynamic topology is completely disrupting your resolution of your 3D model, right? Which you can clearly see from here. And you can also activate the wireframe mode to check the dynamic topology and see these vertices are quite large rather than those. In relative detailing, this detail size actually works according to detail size. Suppose if you want to increase this, you can simply crank this up, and now it's gonna add more bigger vertices on your 3D model. Suppose you want to use 40, and now it's gonna add more bigger vertices. More smaller, gonna add more finer details on your 3D model. Suppose if I want to use it like 1 or 2, and now you can see just adding more finer detail, but from this distance. Suppose I want to add these details from this distance, and now you can see I'm able to do that. And simply I can also do it from here, right? So now I'm able to add those details up to this level, right? So as I change my distance to here, and now you can see I'm adding those vertices from this distance, and it's completely disrupting my topology. So it's very useful. Most of the artists like to work in relative detailing, and few others use constant detailing, which actually gonna help you to add only that specific resolution, and it does not depend on the distance from which you are using your brush. By the way, when you're gonna use constant detailing, the resolution style of this constant is completely opposite to the relative. I mean, you're gonna add only more resolution when you're gonna crank up the resolution like that. And now you can add more resolution to your 3D model. See? And if I go back, you can see it is still adding that number of resolution, 250 number of resolution on your 3D model. It doesn't depend on the distance, that what distance you've been working on. So let's keep it down to 3. Then after that we have brush detail, which gonna help you to add more detail on your 3D model according to the brush radius. So if your radius is bigger, then you're gonna add more detail like that. And if your radius is small, and it's gonna let you add detail like this. So it's completely dependent on the radius of your brush. Then we have manual details. So when you're gonna use manual detail, it's gonna use the resolution number to update your entire model every single time you want to use. Suppose if I'm using this manual detail and I'm using this resolution to like 4 or 5, or then I need to use this detail flood fill, which will set this entire mesh according to that resolution number. So to do that, you can simply use this detail flood, and now you will see, just give it a time. And now you can see it has completely disrupted your entire model up to that resolution size. It has completely destroyed the topology. So when you're gonna use manual detailing, make sure you use it with a little bit caution, because otherwise it's gonna disturb your entire topology of your 3D model. So that's what exactly this remesher do. It's gonna remesh your entire model according to new topology. Suppose I can make this up to 12, and now I'm gonna use detail flood width, and now you can see it has added more topology to our 3D model. So similarly we have symmetrize. Suppose if I'm working on this side and I have added few details on this side like that, and let me use this constant detailing. So suppose if I want to copy this side on that side of this 3D model after working on this side, then all you need to do is simply set the axis. So I want to copy the positive x-axis details to the negative x-axis, so I need to set the direction from positive x to negative x and then symmetrize. And now you can see this side is completely symmetrized to this side, and we can also see the center seam of this symmetry, right? So then we have this optimize. Optimize gonna help us to improve the performance of your sculpt model in your 3D viewport and on your hard drive. Sculpting can put quite a lot on your hardware and your system, so it's better to optimize your model after some time so that you can work more smoothly and awesomely in your 3D viewport. Okay, then we have this remesher. This remesher actually help us to remesh this entire mesh just like this dynamic remesher, but it actually does not work with dynamic topology. So as you can see, it is deactivated on dynamic topology, and you can see in the tooltip, right? So to use this you need to deactivate the dynamic topology, and now it is activated. So we are using this remesher to remesh just like that dynamic topology remesher, and you need to set the mesh size over here. More lower the size, more better the details. So suppose I use this to 0.04 meter, and I use these pixels, move normals, preserve volume. By the way, this remesher actually works according to the volume of your 3D model. It's gonna calculate all the remeshing from your volume of your 3D model. So you can also preserve paint mask, which is actually the masking of this mask tool, which we're gonna cover later in this tutorial. So after that you can simply use this remesher, and now you can see it has remeshed your model into more like quad topology. However, by default in sculpting mode we have only this voxel remesher to remesh the topology, but there is actually one more remesher in this system which you can access from these object data properties, and you can go to this remesh, and now you can see we have another option which is the quad remesher, and you can simply use this quad remesher from this, and it also has its own functionality and options just like this one, and you can simply preserve sharpness, boundary, curvature, paint masks, move normal, just like this one. And then once you are satisfied, then you can simply press OK, and now you can see it is taking its time to calculate the new remesher on this model. And now you can see it also creates quad based topology. But voxel is actually the most recent and latest update in this Blender system, and voxel is generally also used for 3D printing. Suppose if you are sculpting your model for 3D printing, then it's gonna be more better and more efficient for topology remeshing. So that's now completely up to you that which one you're gonna use for your own purpose. Then we have the symmetry. Symmetry is very similar to like mirror. Symmetry is same as that mirror which we deactivated in the start of this tutorial. So you can simply mirror all the effects on any axis just like that. So you can see there is another brush which is working on that axis just like that. So then we have lock if you want to lock any specific axis for anything specific. Then we have tiling if you want to tile out something, and then we have this radial which gonna help us to add more details in a radial flow on our 3D model. So let me just use it, and now you can see it is adding detail in a radial pattern on my 3D model. See, and let me use it once more, and now you can see it is adding detail in a radial flow on my 3D model. So you can use it for many creative works according to your own purpose. Then we have tile offset if you want to offset your tile of your texture, which can be useful in many cases. After that we have options. This is threaded sculpt. So threaded sculpt is actually the option which gonna let you use entire power of your hardware system. Suppose if you are using such a CPU which has multiple cores, like I'm using an octa-core processor, and it will help you to use all the different cores to run your sculpting more smoothly in your 3D viewport. Then we have fast navigate. It can help you to navigate more fastly in your 3D viewport while sculpting. Then we have used deform only. This is gonna help you to deactivate all the modifiers you have applied on your sculpt mode, or only accept multi-resolution, which is actually one of the most useful modifier for sculpting. Then we have unified brush. Unified brush means these all different types of brush have their own different size, strength to be used in this sculpt mode. So you can simply activate any one of these to make that size or strength same for every single brush which you are using from this toolbar, and it will just going to be the same for every single brush. Similarly for the strength, color is actually not the part of sculpt, it is actually the part of texture painting or weight painting, I think. However, it doesn't work in sculpt mode. So after that we have gravity. If you activate this gravity factor, and what it's gonna do is it's gonna add details on the axis on which gravity actually works. See, even if I use it on x-axis, it is still moving that mesh into the z-axis, which is the gravitational axis, right? So you can see it is kind of making saggy mesh. Then we have this orientation, which gonna help you to enlist your model in your orientation bar. And what it's gonna do is, suppose if you have rotated your sculpt model on some inclination angle in layout mode, and if you enlist that model over here, and what it's gonna do is it's simply gonna use this z-axis as a gravitational axis to simply create that same influence which we are seeing over here. And now we are done with these our properties. So now we are going to our brushes. So let's start with our brushes, and we have this draw brush, which is our first, and we have used this brush in our entire tutorial. So this brush simply works like that, which you already know. Draw brush is exactly more like a draw brush, but you're gonna add details more sharply on your 3D model, just like that. And we've been using it as subtract, we use it as add, and now you can see it is adding details more sharply. Then we have this clay, and this clay gonna help you to add more clay on your 3D model, just like that. However, this clay brush also have two more features rather than other brushes, which is the plane offset and this plane trim. So plane offset is actually the feature which gonna use the clay brush up to some specific distance. I mean, if you want to apply this clay brush on anything which is actually this, suppose like this bumpy surface, right? And now you only want to use this plane offset up to like -0.2 meters. And what it's gonna do is gonna add more clay, but only up to this -0.2 meters. So you can see it is adding clay, but only up to -0.2 in this bump, right? So that's what this plane offset actually does. It has a limit from -0.5 meter to 0.5, which is actually the 1 meter. So after that we have this plane trim. So this plane trim will help me to add clay only on those vertices which are actually exceeding this distance limit. Suppose we have these bumps over here, and if I use this distance to add clay on these bumps, then it's gonna only add clay on those points which are exceeding that distance, and you can see clearly, right? By the way, you can also use this original plane as your original normal. I mean, it is only going to use your original plane from where you have started your stroke, so it can be quite useful many times in sculpting. After that we have the clay strips. Clay strips is also quite like clay, and it will also give you the option to add more clay on your 3D model, just like that. Then we have layer gonna add clay on your 3D model in layers, just like that. However, it can be used with height, so you can cap the height value from here, and you can simply use it like that. So after that we have persistence, which gonna help you to create previously created topology, just like that. After that we have inflate, which gonna help you to inflate anything out. However, you can also see the functionality of your brush in your thumbnail preview, that how that specific brush is gonna work on your 3D model. So inflate gonna just inflate out your surface from your 3D model, just like that. Then we have this blob, which gonna create this blobby pattern on your 3D model, and you can use it to create more like a bubbly effect on your 3D model. Then we have this crease to add more crease on your 3D models. You can also increase or decrease the pinch. By the way, in blob you can also use this magnify, which is gonna help you to magnify your effect when you're gonna use this blob on your 3D surface. And similarly in this crease you can use this pinch button, which gonna help you to increase or decrease the factor of this pinch. Then we have the smooth gonna help out your entire model, and generally we all artists use it. And you can also access this smooth brush by by simply pressing shift on your keyboard. Suppose if you're using draw brush and you want to smooth out something, and you can simply press shift on your keyboard, and now you can simply use it as a smooth brush. So after that we have this flatten brush, which gonna help us to flat the topology just like that. It also has a plane offset, which gonna work just like that clave strips. Then we have fill, it's gonna help us to fill out anything in our 3D model just like that. Then we have this scrape gonna help us to carve out our 3D model just like that, right? So it also has a peaking, which gonna help us to peek out the edges of that carved surface just like that. See, it is creating totally pointy edges. Then we have this pinch brush, we're gonna help us to create pinches in our 3D model just like that. You can also use it as magnify to magnify the effect. Then we have this grab gonna help us to grab out the mesh from our 3D model just like that. Then we have the elastic deform, which is gonna help us to use this model as elastic deform just like that. It can also preserve the volume of your mesh, and you can also use these different types of deformations to deform your mesh. Then we have the snake hook gonna help to create more like a hooks, just you can see in this thumbnail just like this. However, you can also use another thing with this snake hook, which is this rake, and what this rake does is gonna align all the edges in that flow in which we are using that brush stroke. So it's gonna also help you to create more better and longer snake hooks rather than when you're gonna use it by deactivating it. So after that we have thumb gonna help you to displace your mesh just like you use with your thumb. So you can simply suppress your mesh with this thumb brush. Then we have pose is actually the most recent update in Blender system, which is gonna help you to set the pose of your character like this. It can help you to save some time from rigging or posing your character in a specific way. So it is very useful and quite helpful tool in this Blender system, in these sculpting brushes. So then we have nudge can create some sort of this nudgy pattern on your 3D surface. All you need to do is simply start using this brush by simply start dabbing and stroking on that surface just like that, and now you can see it is creating that nudge pattern on your 3D model. It can be quite useful many times. Then we have this rotate, which generally works like a nudge, but it creates more like a rotation patterns on your 3D model just like that. Let me show you more better over here. You can see it can be quite useful in many times. Then we have this simplify, which actually works with our dynamic topology, and what it's gonna do is, as you can see, I have rotated this surface over here and it causes some stretching in my vertices of my topology, right? So this simplify gonna change the resolution of those stretched vertices to make them more in a ease position. So you can check this dynamic topology and you can see we have this stretching going on over here, and then it's gonna ease your all vertices and gonna remove all the stretching going on in your topology. So after that we have this masking tool is gonna help you to mask out your surface from your 3D model, and then you can simply use any brush over here and gonna work, and the masking gonna help you to save that surface to be uninfluenced by your brush, and you can see it is completely working. You can also invert your selection by pressing Ctrl I on your keyboard, and your entire mask will be inverted. And you can also remove the mask by pressing Alt on your keyboard, and now it will remove the mask completely. And then we have this box mask, which is going to help you to mask out everything with this box. So just like that. Make sure you use it with very caution. Then we have this lasso mask, which is going to help us to select the mask with lasso selection, just like the selection method. And you can see it works quite good. Then you can simply remove the mask by pressing Alt on your keyboard. After that we have this box hide. Box hide gonna help us to hide the mesh, so you can simply use it like that, and now you can see that mesh is completely hide away. So now if you're gonna use your draw brush on this mesh to move the topology or gonna some changes on topology, then unhide your that hidden mesh by pressing Alt on your keyboard, and you will see that that mesh will be unaffected from the brush, as well as it will only unhide on that space from where it was hide away. So you can use it for many different purposes. It is very useful in sculpting. Then we have this mesh filter. This mesh filter gonna help us to filter this topology. You can use this mesh filter in different ways. You can use it to inflate your model, smooth out, scale, sphere, or random. Suppose I want to scale out my model and I'm gonna use it as scale, and now you can simply scale it out. Then you can inflate if you want to inflate your model, just like that. Then you can use it like spherize to spherize your model, just like that. Then you can simply use it to smooth out your entire model, just like that. You can also change the strength and the deformation axis on which you want to use. Then we have these transformational tools which you have already used in our other different modes. So that's it for these all different types of brushes, and I hope now you can use this sculpting mode with more comfort and more ease, with more better idea that how you can use these different types of brushes and these properties to manipulate the brush or topology or mesh according to your own purpose and to achieve your own goals. So thanks for watching guys, and see you guys in the next part.